Hello and welcome to today's session of the Beyond Shakespeare Project. We've been reading through a cycle of plays by Thomas Heywood, beginning with The Golden Age. We have reached The Iron Age Part 1. That's the name of the play, The Iron Age Part 1. Heywood's Metal Age plays, we've read all of them up until now, and they're all about Greek mythology. You can find all of them on our YouTube channel, all of them so far on our YouTube channel. And in today's exploring session, we're reading through and discussing the very end of the Iron Age Part 1, what you might call the Iron Age Part 1, Part 3. The Iron Age Part 1, Part 1, and the Iron Age Part 1, Part 2. Phew, I managed to say that correctly. Our earlier sessions on this play are also here on YouTube. Take a look if you want. Tell us what you think. Comment, share, like, subscribe. Right. The subject of this play is the Trojan War, and so far we've really enjoyed Heywood's version. We found it dramatically skilled in conveying a very great deal of story in a reasonably short amount of stage time. And we've also been absolutely charmed by how much humanity and how much unexpected humor he brings to these epic, larger-than-life characters. So I'm not going to go too much into the story, as I presume most people know it, but we reached the crisis point of the tale, where Achilles, the champion of the Greeks, has been sitting in his tent playing his lute and refusing to come out and fight. As a result, the Trojans, the besieged Trojans, have been doing a lot of winning battles. Today, however, his best buddy Patroclus has decided to put on his armor and pretend to be him in order to frighten the Trojans and hearten the Greeks. I'm sure that's going to work really well. At the same time, in the other camp, Hector, the great champion of the Trojans, has been persuaded not to fight. So, before we find out what happens next at this exciting point in the plot, I would like to introduce our readers. Reading Achilles today.
Hello, I'm Emma Kemp. I'm an actor and I'm based in London.
Reading Agamemnon and Margaretan.
I'll DiRoberto, academic, Tucson.
Reading Hector and also Ajax.
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake, actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Reading King Priam.
Hello, I'm Lynn Freitas. I'm a college composition teacher. I live in the Northwestern United States.
Reading Troilus and an Echo.
Hello, I'm Helen Good, and I'm a historian and I'm in Hull.
Reading Paris is...
From Paris with Love, Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Ulysses and also Hecuba.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu and I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading Thersites and Menelaus.
Alan Scott, neither an actor nor an academic, based in Suffolk.
And reading Aeneas and Diomed.
Hi, I'm Eric and I'm here to fight a war.
So, without any further ado and picking up from Act 4, Scene 3. Alarum. Enter above Priam, Hector, Astyanax, Hecuba, Helen, etc. Below Achilles and Margaretan.
If thou beest noble by thy blood and valour, tell me if Hector be in field this day?
Thy conjuration hath a double spell. Hector is not in field, but here I stand, thy warlike opposite.
Thou art young and weak. Retire and spare thy life.
I'm Hector's brother. None of Hector's blood did ever yet retreat.
If Hector's friend, here must thy life and glory both have end.
Achilles kills him.
Oh, father, see where Margaretan lies, your son. My brother by Achilles slain.
Thy brother Troilus will revenge his death, but Hector shall not move.
Troilus nor all the Trojans in the field can make their swords bite on Achilles' shield. 'Tis none but Hector must revenge his death.
But not this day.
Before the sun decline, the terror of the earth I'll make divine.
Exit from the walls. Let's go on to Act 4, Scene 4 before we stop for discussion. Alarum, enter Hector, beating before him Achilles' myrmidons.
Thus flies the dust before the northern winds and turns to atoms dancing in the air. So, from the force of our victorious arm, fly armed squadrons of the boldest Greeks, and mated at the terror of our name. So clear the field before me, no man's favoured. The blood of 3 brave princes in my rage I have sacrificed to Margaretan's soul. Ajax Oileus, Ajax Telamon, Marianus, Menelaus, Idomea, I don't know how to pronounce any of these names, sorry. Idomea, archdukes and kings have shrunk beneath this arm. Besides, 1,000 knights have fallen this day beneath the fury of my ponderous blows. And not the least of my victorious spoils quivered my javelin through the brawny thigh of strong Achilles. And I seek him still, once more to tug with him. My sword and breath assist me still, till one drop down in death.
Enter Achilles with his guard of myrmidons.
Come, cast yourselves into a ring of terror about this warlike prince by whom I bleed.
What means the glory of the Grecian host, thus to besiege me with his myrmidons and keep aloof himself?
That shall my lance in bloody letters text upon thy breast, for young Patroclus' death, for my dishonours, for 1,000 spoils, and for that infinite wrack our army hath endured only by thee. Thy life must yield me satisfaction.
My life, and welcome by Apollo's fire. I never vented blood with more content than against thee, Achilles. Come, prepare.
The eminent death, you of my warlike guard, my myrmidons, the slaughters most renowned, now sworn to my designments, your steel poleaxes, fix all at once and girt him round with wounds.
Dishonourable Greek! Hector ne'er deal on base advantage, or ever lift his sword over a quaking foe, but as a spoil unworthy us. Still left him to his fear. Not on the man whom singly I struck down have I redoubled blows, my valour still opposed against a standing enemy. Thee I have twice unhorsed, and when I might have slain thee, grovelling, left thee to the field. Thine armour and thy shield impenetrable, wrought by the god of Lemnos in his forge by art divine, with the whole world engraven, I have through pierced, and it still wears my scars. Forget not how, last day, even in thy tent, I feasted my good sword, and might have flung my balls of wildfire about your fleet, to have sent up your Greekish pride in flames, which would have fixed a star in that high orb to memorize to all succeeding times our glories and your shames. Yet this I spared, and shall I now be slain by treachery?
Tell him your answer on your weapons' points. Upon him, my brave soldiers.
Oh, come, you slaves. Before I fall, I'll make some food for graves that gape to swallow cowards. Cease your dogs upon a lion with your armed fangs, and bear me bravely. Where I touch, I kill. And where I fasten rear body from soul, and soul from hope of rest, all Greece shall know blood must run waste in Hector's overthrow.
Alarum! Hector falls, slain by the Myrmidons. Then Achilles wounds him with his lance.
Farewell, the noblest spirit that e'er breathed in any Terran mansion. Take up his body and bear it to my tent. I'll straight to horse, and at his fetlocks to my greater glory, I'll drag his mangled trunk, that Grecians all may deaf the world with shouts at Hector's fall.
Enter Priam, Aeneas, Troilus, Paris.
Black fate, black day, be never calendared hereafter in the number of the year. The planets cease to work, the spheres to move, the sun in his meridian course to shine. Perpetual darkness overwhelm the day, in which is fallen the pride of Asia.
Rot may that hand, and every joint drop piecemeal from his arm that took such base advantage on a worthy who all advantage scorned.
Yet though his life they have basely ta'en away, his body we have rescued maugre Greece, and Paris, I, the meanest of Priam's sons, have made as many Myrmidons weep blood, as had least finger in the worthy's fall.
What but his death could have armed my hand, or drawn decrepit Priam to the field? That star is shot, his luster quite eclipsed, and shall we now surrender Helena?
Not till Achilles lie as dead as Hector, and Ajax by Achilles, not whilst I live, hath one stone reared upon another's back to overlook these walls, or these high walls to overpeer the plain.
Contrary elements, the warring meteors, hell and Elysium, are not so much opposed as Troy and Greece. For Hector's death.
A most sad funeral will his in Troy be, where shall scarce an eye of twice 200,000 be found to dry. These obits once passed o'er, which we desire, those eyes that now shed water shall speak fire.
Now sound retreat.
We back to Troy return, where every soul in funeral black shall mourn.
Exit.
Hector is dead, and yet my brother Troilus, a second terror to the Greeks, still lives. In him there's hope, since all his Myrmidons have felt his fury, fly even at his name. But must the proud Achilles still insult and triumph in the glory of base deeds? No. Hector he destroyed by treachery, and he must die by craft. But Priam's temper will ne'er be brought to any base revenge. A woman is most subject unto spleen, and I will use the brain of Hecuba. This bloody son of Thestis doth still dote upon the beauty of Polyxena, and that's the base we now must build upon. My mother hath by secret letters wrought him once more to abandon both the field and arms. The plot is cast, which if it well succeed, he that's of blood insatiate must next bleed.
Exit. Wow, well, a great deal has happened in there. There's just about the most famous incident in the Trojan War. Margaretan is killed. I blanked on his name now. Achilles' best buddy, come on.
Patroclus?
Patroclus was killed earlier on. We've had the encounter between Achilles and Hector. Achilles cheated. Achilles dishonored Hector's body by dragging it around on a chariot. The body was rescued. Some Myrmidons were killed. And then Paris is laying a plot. It's very different tone from what we've had so far. What does everyone think? Helen?
Are you 100% certain about this chariot?
He said it.
I know it's a chariot in Homer, but is it a chariot here?
He said chariot.
Did he?
No, he said behind a horse, I thought.
Did he say behind a horse? I beg your pardon. Okay, ignore me. I'm obviously getting the plot wrong.
No, it isn't that. I thought chariot, and then I started to wonder.
It doesn't really matter, I think. I mean, let's look at what we have rather than what we think ought to be there. My mistake for doing otherwise. What do we think about this very great deal of action and speech that we've just had? Rachael.
I was going to say the verse throughout all of this has been beautiful, but here there's something especially beautiful about it. The way that they were going through this. I mean, Heywood's got an eye for detail and everything, but I think he knew as a writer that this moment had to be especially versified, and he really had to pull out all the stops and all the ways. There's something very touching about all these speeches that I think does change the tone. I mean, there's so much noise going on in this too. The sound of the retreat and the things and the drums, and maybe Achilles playing the lute, the stringed instruments in the other scenes gives us another musical contrast as well. From this lovers music and this romance music, comedy music, all of a sudden we get a huge shift in linguistically and musically.
Mm-hmm. Eric.
I was going to say, up till now, we haven't really had a clue that Priam was fighting, which was quite interesting. Usually in most versions of this story, he sits on the walls and watches the battle unfold. Whereas here, he seems to actually be in the action, or at least he's kind of, there, not necessarily present in action, like fighting on the front line, but definitely sort of
No, I mean,
somewhere there.
He explicitly states it. What but his death could thus have harmed my hand or drawn decrepit Priam to the field.
Yeah.
So he's come out.
Whereas you don't get the begging, bargaining, negotiation scene that you get in Homer, which is actually quite beautiful, but also kind of not what he was going for. I mean, he being Heywood.
Yeah, I mean, you have to assume that Priam is not at his best strength. A man who has fathered 50 sons and is not in the prime of his life. Lynn.
So yeah, if Priam, I don't know if Priam's actually struck a blow yet, but he's preparing to fight, and he's aged. He's definitely more than just a mature character. He's So and that's one of the ways that we see here that that kind of the traditions and conventions and, for lack of a better word, sort of civilized agreements between opponents are starting to break down. Earlier in the play, the enemies feasted together and they had a little truce so that they could all collect and dispose of their dead, and there were these sort of rules of engagement and idea of honor that everybody was hanging on to, and that's all really starting to break down. Achilles mobs Hector with unfair numbers, and Hector saying, like, I let you go and I had you down because it was the honorable thing to do, and now you're going to basically outnumber me. How is that honorable? And Achilles like, I don't care about honor. So and then Paris is going to retaliate, but he's got some kind of plot. He's going to get back at Achilles through deceit rather than through force of arms. And we have the old guy entering the battle when he's the one that they're supposed to be protecting. It's like all these traditions and rules of engagement that people have observed up to now, it's just all breaking down. It's all falling away.
Sarah and then Alan.
I think other people had their hands up before me, but
I had said you before, I think.
Oh, okay. Yes. I mean, yeah, exactly what Lynn said. That what Helen was talking about yesterday. The kind of the similarities with tournaments, and all of that honor goes completely out of the window, and it's almost like that whole banquet scene, which was funny and also a bit bizarre, was sort of set up in order to rip it away, set up all these honor this honor system, all these notions of yes, honoring combat, and then just kind of rip them away. And what I absolutely love is the kind of word pictures that we get through Hector's speeches, because I mean, on stage, obviously, you could really bring it to life, and you could have the myrmidons surrounding him. But even without that, just reading his speeches, you can tell what is going on. And that final speech he has, "Come, you slaves," you can just kind of hear it in his language. The picture rises up in front of you of this one man surrounded on all sides with all these people with really vicious weapons who are about to kind of just annihilate him. And somewhere in the background there's Achilles in the distance, sort of, "Oh, upon him, my brave soldiers," and it creates this incredible picture of on the one hand Hector's bravery, but also Achilles, just like tearing up that rule book and just burning it, and it paints Achilles in a very different light. And I don't know, I found it very compelling, and it was all there in the text. Quite often when we're reading these plays, it's like, oh well, we'd need to see this on its feet, or we'd need to read it at pace to kind of see how it would play out, what the potential is. But with this, it was just all there in the verse.
Yeah, Alan.
I must admit, the thing that's concerning me is in the original performance time of this, how many damn people did they have in a theatre company? Because to make this work on stage, you almost need a Cecil B. DeMille size cast. And I just don't see how it was going to work. I mean, I assume this was for one of the outdoor playhouses, and from what we know of those, if you got 20 or 25 people on stage, you'd be jostling for room. And it just seems to need so many people to make it work. I mean, it is filmic rather than theatrical, I think.
Well, maybe that's where the picture painted by the words comes in. Rachael, please, and then Eric.
Yeah, I think yesterday you said something about the morality plays, and that the gods don't show up in this one. There's so much like that. I feel like from this scene there's so much of this there, because we're talking about the honor, and I mean, honor is like your justification as to why you should be able to rule men. And there's so much questions of rulership, like how we had in that Helen scene of her, picking between the personal and the public of the of a ruler, and them fighting here, and Achilles oftentimes, besmirching his own honor by the actions he takes in front of people. I think there's and even Priam, saying he'll take up arms, and choosing to put his personal stuff, for his love for his son above what he should do, which is remain in Troy as the ruler and let other people fight. I think there's, I don't know, what Sarah said, that it makes me look at Achilles and these figures different in terms of the rulership, and when Achilles isn't being played by Brad Pitt, he's kind of not as good of a guy in the way that Ulysses is very cunning in terms of intelligence. Achilles kind of weaponizes his honor, if somebody does something against him, he won't fight, but he's because of his honor. But here, when Hector's doing the honorable thing, he'll take advantage of it, that he's using that like it's a sort of emotional manipulation of honor in a way.
Eric?
Well, I was
And
going
then
to say
Helen.
that sort of, well, for one thing, this is war, so it's not like sort of in a tournament you would care about honor, but in a sort of war context you wouldn't. It would just be if you have the advantage, you take it, kind of thing. And also because we want Heywood and all the English plays are kind of, I mean, English of this period, early modern English, are focused on, you know, sort of Troy being sort of the birthplace of Aeneas, who, you know, subsequently found Rome, who subsequently we get like Britain and so on and so forth. Making the Trojans as heroic as possible is important. Whereas, if I remember correctly, in the Iliad, Hector is actually hunted down like a dog because he runs away. So you wouldn't have that on stage for what would be the equivalent of a national hero kind of thing. Also a question, by this point, had the Armada happened? Because, I mean, I'm guessing they would have had a lot of experience of war. They would have heard about the spoil of Antwerp, the Armada. They would have known what war can do.
Most of the war had been in Ireland as far as the up to 1603, as far as the English were concerned, at sea and in Ireland. But there were wars now. When did the 30 Years' War begin? I can never remember. But there were wars, there were continental wars that both Scots and Irish were heavily engaged in all throughout this period, even though after 1603-4-ish, England wasn't at war. What I was going to say is that Achilles actually seems to me starts behaving badly earlier. He says that he will not fight. This is when his deal to get Polyxena. He says he won't fight, and neither will his Myrmidons. But he sends his Myrmidons and his armor, despite his word.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's very notable that he doesn't actually strike Hector until after Hector is dead. And he actually wounds a dead body, which is pretty low.
Safer that way, though.
Yeah, and this is true. It has been pointed out. But I mean, what Eric was saying, you know, honor is fine in tournaments, but not so useful on the battlefield. But on the other hand, if you don't have Geneva Conventions, if you don't have some sort of rule book, then your side will suffer as well as the other.
I think we need to be a little bit careful with the word honor, because it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to us than it did either to the early moderns or to Homer or to Virgil or wherever the early moderns get this story. One of the things that honor means is to be honored, glory. I think Achilles, at least in this version, seems to be much more interested in being famous than in doing the right thing type of honor. However, I have to agree that's dishonorable by all standards I can think of, the way that he behaved in this battle. Not that I've ever found him a particularly laudable character in any version of the story. Speaking of Achilles, can we come back for a moment to Achilles, who in this version doesn't fight originally because he's in love with Polyxena, and now Paris is laying a plot to do with Polyxena. What's going on there? Anyone want to talk about that? Helen.
Priam is far too honorable to be involved in plots, but Hecuba is a woman and therefore somewhat pragmatic.
Mm-hmm. And what's the plan?
do spoilers?
Kyle seems to know.
She needs to unmute. No, she won't.
I didn't know. I was noticing too how much he's blaming the women of various Hecuba's brain and
Okay. Rachael.
Oh, I think there's just some plot to poison him. It's that thing where it poisoned the woman's weapon, that type of thing. I think this is also the whatchamacallit about Paris that we were getting yesterday, like how he's this comical figure and he's this all this other stuff. I think there's very much the sort of things that you get I don't know that I've seen in other versions of this where Paris isn't, he's not Hector, he's not the whatever, and there's the whole part of him as being the lover and not as much of the fighter, and as he doesn't have as much prowess. That he's the one that suggests this. It doesn't come from these other guys who are fighting out in the field. That he's playing pretty dirty now. So I like that Geneva Convention thing that Helen said, that there's, and to what Lynn said, that it's kind of like descended and it's no holds bar in a way.
I mean, the first thing he did was go to another man's house and hit on his wife. So I'm not sure that he hasn't been dishonorable from the beginning. But I take your point. Yeah. Shall we continue? Or no, Sarah?
Well, it goes back though to what Helen was saying about everybody loses when the rules of battle aren't followed, because the thing is he concocts this plot after Hector's been killed. Achilles has kind of he's gone back on his word. He's behaved really badly. He's just been sort of like, it was like Hector stood for the kind of integrity of war in a way. He didn't want to go to war in the first place, but then once war was inevitable, he was like, right, I'm going to step up and do my bit. And with the death of Hector, we've kind of lost any integrity that the war had in the earlier scenes, with the banqueting and whatnot. And now, Achilles is playing by a different set of rules. He's being treacherous, so now, of course, he's facing the more treacherous opponent. Hector's dead. Integrity is dead, and what he's left with is Paris. And in a straight contest of who's going to be the most treacherous, we kind of already know who's going to win that, because we've seen Paris in action.
Okay. Oh, Rachael, yes.
Sorry, I know I've talked a lot. It's just one more thing. Because Eric said in the chat that I think this is in 1632, and it doesn't Cromwell or something like that happen in 16. Wait, oh, who is it? What is 1642? Why do we end in 1642? Isn't there some changeover in government?
Yeah, 42. So some while after this.
So I was going to say maybe that there's talk, because in other scenes there's also talks about rulership and war. Other people have said about the 30 Years' War, but maybe there's some stuff cooking and dissatisfaction with the government, and this is some conversation to have about it in a certain way.
I think you're jumping the gun a little bit in terms of major political change, but these are always topics that are in a ferment. I'd like to move on, but Kyle and Eric, if you have brief remarks, please go on.
I was just thinking, a lot of times the Roman plays have to do with republicanism. They're just that. So.
I was just going to say that technically the Achilles can play by his own rules, because technically he's half god, therefore he's not entirely mortal, therefore he doesn't play by mortal rules. But it depends on how you want to play it.
But again, that's been barely mentioned in this play.
They do mention it once, I think, but that's about it.
They call...
Yes, but he isn't constantly banging on about it.
Yeah. And
God descended, it's...
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Act 4, Scene 5. And indeed, Achilles discovered in his tent. About him his bleeding Myrmidons, himself wounded, and with him Ulysses.
Why will not great Achilles don his arms and rouse his bleeding Myrmidons? Shall Troilus march back to Troy with armour, sword and lance, all dyed in Grecian blood? Shall aged Priam boast in fair Ilium that the son of Thetis, whose warlike spear pierced mighty Hector's breast, lies like a coward slumbering in his tent, because he fears young Troilus?
Pardon me, Ulysses. Here's a brief from Hecuba, wherein she vows, if I but kill one Trojan, I never shall enjoy Polyxena.
But thinks Achilles, if the Greeks be slain, and put force to march away from Troy, that he shall then enjoy Polyxena? No, 'tis King Priam's subtlety. Whilst thou sleepest in thy tent, Troilus through all our troops makes lanes of slaughtered bodies, and will toss his balls of wild fire, as great Hector did, o'er all our naval forces. But did this prince lie breathless, bleeding at Achilles' feet? Despairing Priam would to make his peace, make humbly tender of Polyxena, and be much proud to call Achilles' son?
Were Troilus slain?
Who else deals wounds so thick and fast as he? They call him Hector's ghost, he glides so quick through our battalions. If he beat us hence, and we be then compelled to sue to them, it will be answered that great Hector's deathsman shall never wed his sister. Hector's son will never kneel to him, by whose strong hand his father fell. But were young Troilus slain, and Priam's sons sent wounded from the field, Troy then would stoop and send Polyxena even to Achilles' tent.
My sword and armour, arise, my bleeding ministers of death. I'll feast you with an ocean of blood royal, Ulysses. Ere this sun fall from the skies, by this right hand the warlike Troilus dies.
Excellent. Let's talk about that scene, because that was pretty important, I think. What just happened there?
Well, Achilles just did a 180, basically.
Achilles just did a 180, having been persuaded by Ulysses, who's good at that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's good at that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Is that enough? Do you want to move on? It was a short little scene.
Could I
Yeah.
make a note about Greek fire?
Please.
Yeah, this is about those balls of fire.
Because, I mean, these balls of fire are not random or anything to do with rock songs. They are, I suppose it's a primitive form of napalm. It was well known in the early modern world. The secret of Greek fire was very closely guarded. I mean, it had got out by the time of this play, but I think it's being assumed that what was an early medieval invention went all the way back to Homeric times.
Right.
But Greek fire, this wildfire was a thing.
Mm-hmm. And associated with Anatolia, I think, which is why they've got it that way.
Well, it was called Greek.
Yes, it was called Greek, but the Byzantines were there and were being the Greeks.
Oh, yes. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, yes, Anatolia. Yes, sorry, my geography isn't great. Had you said Byzantine, I would have known what you meant.
I was trying to reference the landmass rather than the empire.
Fair enough.
Because that's where Troy is also. It's on the join between the Anatolian Peninsula and the European mainland. Yes, Alan.
Well, you've also got the issue that just inland from Troy is the oil fields that have been in contention for the last century and more, where crude oil effectively bubbles up through the ground, giving you the raw materials for making said Greek fire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's been proven, but that's certainly the most plausible explanation for what it is. And the way it's described sounds like it's a petroleum fire.
Yeah, or crude oil and sulfur, I think, was the
Yeah.
both of which I think do occur in that region.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Shall we go on?
Mm.
Act 4, Scene 6. Alarum. Do-do-do-do. Enter Troilus and Thersites.
Hold if thou be'st a man.
Stand, if thou be'st a soldier, do not shrink.
Art thou not Troilus, young and lusty Troilus?
I am, what then?
And I, Thersites, lame and impotent. What honour canst thou get by killing me? I cannot fight.
What makest thou in the field then?
I came to laugh at madmen. Thou art one. The Trojans are all mad. So are the Greeks. To kill so many thousands for one drab. For Helen, a light thing. Do thou turn wise and kill no more. I, since these wars began, shed not one drop of blood.
But proud Achilles slew my bold brother, and you Grecians all shall perish for the noble Hector's fall.
Hold, the pox take thee, hold, whilst I have breath, I'm bound to curse thy fingers.
Enter Achilles with his Myrmidons, after Troilus hath beaten Thersites.
I might have slain young Troilus when his sword late sparkled fire out of the Spartan's helm, but that had stilled my fame. But I will trace him through the whole army. When I meet the Trojan, breathless and faint, I'll thunder on his crest some valour, but advantage likes me best.
Enter Troilus.
Let cowards fight with cowards, and both fear. The base Thersites is no match for me. Oppose me to the proudest he in field, most eminent in arms and best approved, to make the thirsty after blood to bleed. And that's the proud Achilles.
Who names us?
Fate! Thou hast now before me set the man whom I most sought, to thee whom I will offer to appease Hector's ghost a sacrifice. You widowed matrons who now mourn in tears, and all you watery eyes surcease to weep. Fathers that in this war have lost your sons, and sons your fathers, by Achilles' hand. No more lament upon their funeral arms, but from this day rejoice. Posterity from age to age this to succession tell. He falls by Troilus, by whom Hector fell.
Hector's sad fate betide him. Soldiers on. Both brothers show like mercy thy vain sound, that boasted lies now levelled with the ground.
Troilus is slain by Achilles and the Myrmidons. Enter Thersites.
Achilles,
What's he? Thersites?
thou art a coward.
Have I not saved thy life, and slain proud Troilus, by whom the Greeks lie piled in breathless heaps?
Yes, when he was out of breath. So thou slewest Hector, girt with thy Myrmidons.
Dogged Thersites, I'll cleave thee to thy navel if thou opest thy venomous jaws.
Do, good dog killer.
You slave!
I'm out of breath now, too. Oh, bug-bait Greek, thou durst not have touched me.
Achilles beats him off, retreat sounded, exeunt. So here we have been talking about honor, and we have one of the most old school honorable characters in the play, Troilus, who is all about that honor, encountering first cynical Thersites, who pretends to be dead, I guess, convinces him he's slain, and then Achilles, who kills him. And there, this extraordinary encounter between Achilles and Thersites. Thoughts? Helen. Sorry, Sarah.
This is trivializing it somewhat, but I couldn't help but think of that scene in Indiana Jones, where there's the guy with the sword and he's doing all the fantastic sword work, and then he just pulls out his gun and shoots him. And in that context, it's kind of funny, or entertaining. It's meant to be. But in this, it's actually, I think, kind of horrifying because, like you said, Troilus is just so wrapped up in the honor. And also he's lost Hector, who, he just idolized, I think. And he's there to, avenge Hector's death. And Achilles is just like, but he doesn't even. It's like he doesn't. Obviously, he doesn't have a gun. But what he does have are all these myrmidons. He doesn't even have to turn a hair himself. He can just kind of. I mean, it does say Troilus is slain by him, Achilles, but you get the impression it's a very, very unfair fight, and that Achilles is just like, yeah, whatever. I killed your brother. I'm going to kill you too. Bye. And I just thought, oh, you are such a villain. I've got to the point now where I am actually like rooting for somebody to do him in, and if it turns out to be Paris, who I really couldn't stand earlier, I'm still like, yeah, whatever. If Paris is what it takes, then, somebody has got to kind of, hoist him with his own petard. And it's really interesting the way the play has done that and pulled me in and just messed about with what my emotions and who I'm following and who I care about. It's just very, very clever.
And certainly Thersites thinks it was the Myrmidons who done it. And since the whole point of Achilles' idea has meant to be that he wants to marry Polyxena, he's now killed two of her brothers in this highly dishonorable way. Lynn.
This is the I don't actually know much about the Roman iterations of this story, but this I was just thinking that this Achilles is the medieval and Renaissance Achilles. This is not Homer's Achilles. In Homer, there's kind of a big deal made of the fact that when Patroclus is killed, Achilles just goes off the rails. He stops eating and sleeping, and he stops sleeping with his mistress, and he stops washing. He is just nuts. He's basically kind of not in control of his own behavior, and he kills Hector in this kind of blind berserker rage, and desecrates Hector's body because the rage hasn't been satisfied yet. And it takes a kind of and that doesn't get interrupted until he has an encounter with Priam, who comes to beg Hector's body back in one of the most moving scenes in the Iliad. Anyway, so in a way, in the Greek vision of this, Achilles is kind of almost not responsible for his own behavior because he is crazy. But here it's so calculated. And there's and his grief at the loss of his best friend is not very much emphasized. So yeah, Achilles is not a hero, even in a kind of ambiguous sense. He is really just kind of a shit here.
Yeah, I mean, he's straight up villaining it. Eric.
I was just going to talk about Thersites because it's interesting how he kind of starts off being very, well, not particularly nice. I mean, he's not nice to anybody. He's a railer, but he's kind of like almost like speaking truth to power. And here, I think the thing that he does is kind of, because everyone outranks him and so on and so forth, is kind of basically pretending to be helpless, kind of like, like, I know there's some types of pigeons and birds that just like fall back and get hypnotized when you sort of, but they play dead basically. if a predator approaches. So it's kind of, I think this is the kind of thing that he's doing, just sort of making them think that they know that they're bigger, and then just demeaning them with words.
Mm-hmm. But yes, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, Troilus was really built up in the previous scene. There was all this discussion about how he just like cut down through their battalions, and how he was, full of rage and full of ire and anger and everything at what had happened to Hector. And then Achilles just kills him. Really, what it felt like very quickly. And yes.
Yeah, sorry, I have to say that the stage directions I have, the Achilles kills him. The Achilles part was in brackets, so I assume that's a later interpolation. And Thersites tells us that the Myrmidons kill him, which is what happened to Hector, who was an even better fighter.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Helen.
I've been doing some Googling. Chapman's translation of Homer in full was published in 1616. So, and other bits had come out earlier, but the first complete Homer, translated by Chapman, was on the streets in 1616 in London.
Okay.
So he'd got Homer. I mean, I find Chapman practically impossible to read, but Keats liked it, so who am I?
Yes. But there's certainly a very Roman element in some of this, whether he's read Homer or in translation or not. The emphasis on Aeneas, the US endings to everything, and so on. Any further? No. Oh, Rachael, yes.
No, I think you guys were saying there was some war going on. Did you guys say there was a 30 years war? I don't know the history, somebody's saying in chat. But I don't know, there's something about the Troilus' speech that seems pointed to something more contemporary, like seems almost like a step out, or, and talk to the audience. Or maybe, I don't know, somebody tell me what's going on in the UK at this time, or England at this time.
Well, do we have a date for this play?
We have a publication date, but we don't know how long it was around prior to that.
We haven't even gotten to Act 5 yet, so I'm not sure that I want to spend too much more on this.
Sure.
Okay, sorry. Act 4, Scene 7. Enter Agamemnon, Ajax, Ulysses, and all others but Paris.
To whom dost thou address thine embassy?
To Achilles.
And not the general? It concerns our place to hear King Priam's embassy.
Let me have passage to Achilles' tent. There Agamemnon, if you please, may hear what Priam sends to your great champion.
Let it be so.
The general wrongs that honour we princes in our love confer on him. Had I the imperial mandate in my mouth, I would not lose one jot of my command for all the proud Achilles is on earth. Take him at his best, he's but a fellow peer, and should lift his head above the clouds. I hold myself his equal.
Enter Achilles from his tent.
Untutored Ajax.
Who spake that word?
'Twas I, Achilles. Let the son of Priam be private with us.
It belongs to us to be partakers of his embassy.
Dismiss then our inferiors. You, Ulysses, are welcome. Menelaus, Diomed. Let Ajax stay without and know his duty.
Exit.
Duty? Oh, you gods! Ha! In what dialect spake he, that language which Greece yet never knew, we owe to him? I'll after him, and drag him from his tent, and teach the insolent manners. Give me way. Ulysses, thou and all the world shall know that, save the obedience that I owe the gods a duty to my father Telamon, Ajax knows none. No, not to Agamemnon. For what he hath of me's my courtesy, what he claims else, or the proudest Greek that breathes, I'll pay him in the poorest and basest scorn contempt was e'er expressed in.
Ajax, you are too bold with great Achilles. You bear yourself more equal than you ought, with one so trophied.
Bold? Oh, my merits are you so soon forgot? Why, King of Ithaca, what hath this toy, above so talked of, done? Saving slain Hector, which at best received was but scarce fairly, which the common tongues voices with base advantage.
Yes, Prince Troilus, surnamed the second Hector, lieth embaked in his cold blood, slain by Achilles' hand. The stream of glory now runs all towards him. Achilles looks for it, Ajax.
But when Achilles slumbered in his tent, or, waking with his lute, courted the air, then Ajax did not bear himself too bold with this great champion. When I saved our fleet from Hector's wildfire, I deserved some praise. But then your tongues were mute.
You, in these times, did not affect ostent, but still went on. But Thetis' son looks for a world of sound to spread his attributes.
The proud Achilles shall not outshine me long in the next battle. If to kill Trojans be to dim his praise, I'll quench his lustre by my bloody rays.
I'm sorry, is that a stage direction I've missed?
Yeah, it's enter Agamemnon.
Thank you.
Shall I return that answer to King Priam?
Say in the morning we will visit him. So bear our kind regrets to Hecuba.
But will Achilles trust himself with Priam, whose warlike sons were by his valour slain?
Priam is honourable. See, here's his hand. His queen religious, and behold her name. Polyxena, divine. Read here her vows. Honour, religions, and divinity, all jointly promising Achilles' safety. Paris, you hear our answer, so return it.
We shall receive Achilles with all honour.
Exit.
Were I Achilles and had slain great Hector, with valiant Troilus, Priam's best loved sons, I, for the brightest lady in all Asia, would not so trust my person with the father.
I am resolved, Ulysses. You once told me Priam would sleep if Troilus once were slain.
And I dare gage my life. The reverend king intends no treason to Achilles' person, but merely by this honourable league to draw our warlike champion from the field.
But we'll deceive his hopes. Fear not, great kings. When to my tent I bring Polyxena, the sooner Troy lies level with the ground. You understand me, lords. Shall I entreat you, associate me unto the sacred temple of divine Phoebus?
In me these kings shall answer. We in peace will bring Achilles to Apollo's shrine, provided Priam, ere we enter Troy, will give us hostage for our safe return.
My honoured hand with his.
Exound. Sorry, yeah, we had a bit of confusion there because the stage direction said Paris wasn't on, and then Paris spoke, and then the stage direction said Paris came on. I wonder if this is a battlements and real. Anyway, we've had this ceasefire discussion. Peace talks. What do we think of that scene, Alan?
It almost sounded like an argument going on the subs bench, given that many of the leading characters have already been dispatched. You know, and this is the second rankers basically coming forward and, you know, trying to catch up with the willy waving.
Anyone else? Elizabeth.
It's interesting that Alan should mention the willy waving because I hadn't really noticed it. You know, it's become very, very male-centric. And I wasn't here for the previous session, so I'm not sure how we transitioned into this very, very male-centric world for the battle. But I just wanted to agree with Alan there.
Sarah, did I see a hand?
Yeah, you did, but it wasn't important.
Okay. No one, Helen.
No, I was just going to remark that I was reading, among many other parts, Hecuba yesterday, and she didn't get to say anything. I mean, she's been the women, Polyxena,
Helen,
Hecuba, Helen, they've all taken time out in order to come in again later, presumably.
Well, I mean, the famous bit is all the battling, so I guess we had to get that over with. She's about to come on in the next scene. Shall we see what happens?
Yes.
Act 4, Scene 8. Enter Paris and Hecuba.
O Paris, till Achilles lies dead, as did thy brother Hector at his feet, his body hacked with as many wounds, as was thy brother Troilus when he fell. I never, never shall have peace with heaven, or take thee for their brother or my son.
Mother, I hate Achilles more than you, but I have heard he is invulnerable. His mother Thestis from the oracle receiving answer, he should die at Troy, being yet a child, and to prevent that fate, she dipped him in the sea, all save the heel. These parts she drenched remain impenetrable. But what her dainty hand forbore to drown, as loath to feel the coldness of the wave, that, and that only may be pierced with steel. Now, since I know his fellow kings intend to be his guard to Ilium, what's my rage? Were this my weapon to destroy a prince, whose flesh no sword can bite off?
Have I not heard thee, Paris, praise thyself for skill in archery? Have I not seen a shaft sent level from thy constant hand, command the mark at pleasure? Mayst thou not thou with such an arrow and the self-same bow wound proud Achilles in that undrenched part, and by his heel draw life's blood from his heart?
Well thought on, the rare cunning of this hand, none save the powers immortal can withstand. When in the temple he shall think to embrace my sister Polyxena, I'll strike him there. The Greeks are entered Troy. Let's fill the train to avoid suspicion. And now my shaft and bow, grease from my hand, received thine overthrow.
Well, we were talking before about Thomas Heywood being very dramatically skilled. I'm not sure I'm that thrilled with this dramatic technique here. He could have told us all along Paris was a great archer. He could have told us all along that Achilles was invulnerable except for his heel. Now suddenly we have his goddess mother appearing out of nowhere, the invulnerability out of nowhere, and oh, by the way, Paris is a really good archer. Sarah.
This could be the playwright in me being biased, but I feel he's being stymied a bit by his source material here. I felt in that scene that there is a play that Heywood wants to write, and there is the original material. There's the Chapman probably translation that he's read, and he's got this far through the play, and he suddenly thought, oh shit, I need to put in a bit of what actually happens, according to the source material. Because, yes, I mean, in actual fact, the whole, I thought this earlier, but then it's a testament to Heywood's skill that I actually forgot about it because I got so sucked into the drama. But actually, all that business with Hector wounding Achilles, and then Achilles, that's supposedly being the reason why Achilles steps back and just tells his myrmidons to hack him down. Of course, none of that makes sense if it's like actually he is invulnerable. And it's almost like
Yeah.
he's writing this really kind of tight, psychologically structured play, and then the source material is kind of getting in the way a bit, and it kind of comes out in this scene.
Lynn.
Yeah, I don't remember if we get the backstory in the Odyssey, but Achilles lives to the end of the Iliad. Yes, my classicists here. Hector is dead,
Spoilers.
but yes,
Spoilers, but he does get killed by an
He does-
arrow in
he
the
does-
heel.
Yeah.
but not in Homer. He does get
Yeah.
killed, but the heel thing is later.
I don't think so. I think it's,
No, it's in Homer.
I'm pretty sure it's in Homer. It's in every story of the Iliad I've ever heard.
Oh well, yeah, I'll have to go back and look at the Odyssey, but if Heywood had just been reading Chapman's Iliad, that bit's not in there.
I think you're wrong about that, Lynn. I mean, I'm not going to nail my colors to the mast on it, but I think it's in there. In any case, I'm going to try and move us on because we are still in Act 4. So, yes,
Yeah.
by all means, remarks, but please brief and to the point of the drama. Yes, Rachael.
I was just gonna say that little bit before we had about Paris talking about the poison. It's almost like you could have some subtext, comedic subtext to the scene of Hecuba shooting that down. Him thinking because she's a woman, she'll have poison, she'll take up that plan real quick, and she's like, "Well, shoot him with an arrow. You know, do something with the sword. If he won't go down by a sword, use arrows instead." You know, she's given him like this sort of other answer that I don't think he might have expected.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can we move on? Shall we move on? Act 4, Scene 9. Enter at one door Priam, Hecuba, Paris, Aeneas, Antenor, Deiphobus, Helena, and Polyxena. At the other, Agamemnon, Achilles, Menelaus, Ulysses, Diomed, Thersites, and Ajax. They interchange embraces. Polyxena is given to Achilles.
Though the damage you have done to Troy might cease our arms and arm our brows with wrath, yet with a smooth front and heart unfeigned, we now bid Achilles welcome all, before these kings, and in the sight of Helen, the dearest of my daughters, Polyxene, I tender thee. On to Apollo's shrine. The Flamen says, these nuptial rites once past, you of our best varieties shall taste.
Exeunt. Paris fetcheth his bow and arrows.
My bow. Now thou great god of archery, the patron of our action and our vows, direct my shaft to wound bright Thestis' son, and let it not offend thy deity, that in thy temple I exhaust his blood, without respective place. Revenge seems good.
Exit. A great cry within. Enter Paris.
'Tis done. Achilles bleeds, immortal powers clap hands, and smile to see the Greeks fall dead, by whom the valiant Hector's blood was shed.
Enter all the Trojans and the Greeks, bringing in Achilles with an arrow through his heel.
Priam, thou hast dishonorably broke the laws of arms.
By all the gods I vow, I was a stranger to this horrid act. It never came from Priam.
Call for your surgeon then to stop his wound.
For if he die, it will be registered forever to thy shame.
A surgeon there.
It is in vain for life, that god of physic, we Grecians honor in a serpent's shape. He could not staunch my blood. No, fellow kings, my mother Thetis, by whose heavenly wisdom my other parts were made invulnerable, could not of all the gods obtain that grace, but that my blood, vented as now it is, the wound should be incurable. What coward that durst not look Achilles in the face hath found my life's blood in this speeding place?
'Twas I, 'twas Paris.
'Twas a milksop then.
A traitor to all valor.
Did not this bleeding Greek kill valiant Hector, encompassed with his guard of Myrmidons?
Degenerate Paris, not old Priam's son. Thou never tookst thy treacherous blood from me.
How cheers, Achilles. Though thy too much pride, which held the heart of Ajax from thy love, he'll be the foremost to revenge thy death.
Gramercy, noble Ajax, Agamemnon, Ulysses, Diomed, I feel my strength begins to fail. Let me have burial, and then to arms, revenge Achilles' death. Or, if proud Troy remain invincible, to Lycomedes send youthful Pyrrhus, my son begot on bright Dedamia, and let him force his vengeance through the hearts of these by whom his father was betrayed. I faint. May every drop of blood I shed, exhaled by Phoebus, purify the air, that every soul in Asia that draws breath may poisoned die for great Achilles' death.
He's dead, the pride of all our Grecian army.
Will Priam let us bear his body hence?
Yes, and not drag it about the walls of Troy, as he did Hector's basely.
Take it, and with all truce time to bury it.
Come, princes, on your shoulders bear him then, bravest of soldiers and the best of men.
They bear him off, and to Priam enter Aeneas.
Where's mighty Priam?
What's the news, Aeneas?
Such as will make your highness doff your age and be as youthful spirited as the spring. Penthesilea, queen of the Amazons, with mighty troops of virgin warriors, gallant Viragos for the love of Hector and to revenge his death, are entered Troy. May it please you to receive the Scythian queen.
What Troy can yield or Priam can express, the Amazonian princes shall partake. Come, Hecuba and ladies, let's prepare to bid her friendly welcome to this war.
Explicit actus quartus, finally. Before we go on to scene 5, anything to say about this scene? I'm going to suggest that we stay away from comparing it to what we think the source material might be or might not be, and just look at what we've got. What do we have? Sarah?
I just love the hypocrisy of Agamemnon there. I mean, it was just like, what? Where were you when Achilles was busy breaking the law of arms? You know, he didn't mutter a peep then, but when it's on the other side, it's like, oh yeah, no, you've been so bad there, so dishonorable. Just made me laugh. And you know, we were talking a lot yesterday about the humor in this play and the fact that there is humor and it can be played. We haven't had so much of that today, but I think there are places where it still is there.
Yep. Kyle?
I just wondered about that in the beginning where he says, I'm the double of Hector, or is it Hector? My character, Margaretan, or that strange character. It feels like that because he just immediately kills him, that it's a bit comedic, maybe. I wondered.
Yeah, I think you're both right. I think there's room for more comedy than we're necessarily acknowledging or seeing in this read through of this section. Further thoughts before we start Act 5? Elizabeth?
Yeah, I thought that with Act 4, we had this like really strange but good compression and sort of elongation of time, because at some times during the act, it felt as though time was being drawn out. And then when we speed towards that conclusion of Achilles' death, time seemed to speed up almost.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Act 5 then? Act 5. Scene 1. Enter Thersites with soldiers, bringing in a table with chairs and stools placed about it.
Come, spread, up with the pulpit straight, seats for the judges, all the kings of Greece. Why, when you lazy drudges, is this the place for a whole jury royal? Where's the armour, the prize for which the crafty fox Ulysses and mad bull Ajax must this day contend. What, is already? Rare world, when instead of smooth-tongued lawyers, soldiers now must bleed.
Loud music. Enter all the kings of Greece, the armor of Achilles, born betwixt Ulysses and Ajax, and placed upon the table. The princes seat themselves. A chair is placed at either end of the stage, the one for Ajax, the other for Ulysses.
This session's valiant Duke of Salamine and King of Ithaca was called for you, since great Achilles' armor is the prize, due to the worthier. Here before these kings and in the face of all the multitude, you are appointed for your several pleas. That prince who to these arms can prove most right shall wear his purchase in the army's sight.
If to the worthiest, they belong to me. Could you select amongst all this throng of princes none worthier than Ulysses to contend with Ajax? And in view of all our navy, of all these tall ships gilt with Hector's flames, which when Ulysses fled into his tent, I extinguished. These 1,200 ships I saved at once, deserved Achilles' arms. Laertes' some may think it grace enough that, though he miss his aim, he may be said to have strove with Ajax, Ajax who excels as much in arms as he in eloquence. My hands perform more than his tongue can speak, act more than he can talk. Were I less valiant and had but half my vigour, like him, weak, my royal birth would for this armour speak. Duke Telamon, that in the Argo sailed to Chalcus, and in Ilium's second sack first reared Alcides' colours on the walls, my father was. His father, Aeacus, one of the three that judge infernal souls, and Aeacus was son to Jupiter. Thus am I third from Jove. Besides, Achilles by marriage was my brother, and I crave, since he is dead, my brother's arms to have. What hath Ulysses with our kin to do, being a stranger, not of Peleus' blood? Grave heroes, if not honour, prize my merit. I plead both worth and blood, these arms to inherit.
Believe me, two sound pleas on Ajax's part. I feel the prize will be conferred on him.
His arguments are maxims and sound proofs to win him way into the soldiers' hearts.
Let him proceed.
As I hasted to the siege of Troy, when he feigned madness, must he wear these arms? When in the phalanx, with old Nestor charging, thou, at the name of Hector, fledst the field, and left the good old man encompassed round, calling aloud, Ulysses, Ulysses, stay! The more he cried, the more thou madest thy way. Prince Diomed, you saw it, and upbraided this Ithacan's base flight. But see heaven's justice, old Nestor escaped. Great Hector was not there, but meets Ulysses as he fled from Hector. He that but late denied help now wants help. For at the sight of Hector, down he falls and cries aloud for aid. I came and saw thee quaking with terror under Hector's arm. The ponderous blow I took upon my targe, and as the least of all my noble deeds, saved these faint limbs from slaughter, which now sue to don these glorious arms. Nor do I blame thee for fearing Hector. What is he of Greece that, saving Ajax, quaked not at his name? Yet I did meet that Hector, guiled in blood of Grecian princes, fought with him so long till all the host, deft with our horrid strokes, begirt us with amazement. Wilt thou know my honour in this combat? It was this: I was not conquered. If thou still contendest, imagine but that the field, the time, the foes, Hector alive, thee quaking at his feet, and Ajax interposing his broad shield twixt death and thee, and thou the arms must yield.
What can the wise Ulysses say to this? Ajax prevails much with the multitude, The general murmur doth accord with him.
I ever thought the son of Telamon did better merit the Achillean arms than Dulcinea king.
Forbear to censor, till both be fully heard.
Methinks, grave heroes, you should seek an Ajax to wear these arms, not let these arms be sought by Ajax. What hath sly Ulysses done to countervail my acts? Killed unarmed Rhesus, and set on sleepy Dolon in the night, stolen the Palladium from the Trojan fane. Oh, brave exploits! Nor hast thou these performed without the help of warlike Diomed. So you betwixt you should divide these spoils. Alas, thou knowest not what thou seek'st, fond man. Thou that fight'st all by craft and in the night, the radiant splendour of this burnished helm, shining in darkness as the sun by day, thy thievish spoils in ambush would betray. Thy politics head too weak to wear this casque, this massy helm. Thou canst not mount his spear. His warlike shield, that bears the world engraven, will tire thine arm. Fool! Thou dost ask a spear, a shield, a casque. Thou hast not strength to wear. Now, if these kings, or the vain people's error, so far should err from truth to give them thee, 'twould be a means to make thee sooner die. The weight would lag thee that art wont to fly. Thou hast a shield unscarred, my sevenfold targe with 1,000 gashes piecemealed from mine arm, and none that would fit me. To conclude, go bear these arms for which we two contend into the mid-ranks of our enemies, and bid us fetch them thence, and he to wear them by whom this royal armour can be won. I had rather fight than talk, so I have done.
Loud shout within, crying, Ajax! Ajax!
With your prayers, O Grecian kings, my vows might have prevailed with heaven. There had been then no such contention. Thou hadst kept thine arms, and we Achilles thee. But since the fates have taken him from us, who hath now more right to claim these arms he dead, than he that gave them unto Achilles living, nor great princes? Let that smooth eloquence yon fellow scorns, if it be any, be rejected now, and hurt his master, which so many times hath profited whole Greece, if we plead blood which is not ours, but all our ancestors. Laertes was my father, his Arcesius, his Jove, from whom I am third. Beside, I claim a second godhead by my mother's name. What do we talk of birth? If birth should bear them, his father being nearer Jove than he, should wear this honour, or if next of blood Achilles' father Peleus should enjoy them, or his son Pyrrhus. But we plead not kindred, or near propinquity. Let alliance rest, his be the armour that deserves it best. Achilles' mother Thetis being foretold, her son should die at Troy, concealed him from us in habit of a lady. To this siege I brought him, therefore challenge all his deeds, as by Ulysses done. 'Twas I sacked Thebes, Chryskis, and Scylla. With Lyrnessus' walls, I Troilus and renowned Hector slew. First with this helmet I adorned his head. He gave it living, who demands it dead?
'Tis true, for like a peddler being disguised and coming where Achilles spent his youth in womanish habit, the young ladies they look on his glosses, jewels, and fine toys. He had a bow too much Achilles drew, so by his strength the Ithacan him knew. Had Ajax gone, Achilles then had stayed. Hector still lived, or ransacked tents to invade. What canst thou do but barely fight? No more. We can both fight in council. I direct the manner of our battles and propose for victual and munition to supply the universal host. Cheer up the soldiers to endure a tedious siege. When all the army cried, "Let's away for Greece," and raised their tents, Ajax amongst the foremost had trussed up his bag and baggage, when I raided him and them, and all by my oratory persuaded their retreat. What Greece hath won from Troy since then is by Ulysses done. Behold my wounds over Grecians, and judge you if they be cowards, marks there in my breast. Let boasting Ajax show such noble scars. These Grecian heroes I took I in your wars. I grant he fought with Hector. 'Twas well done. Where thou deservest well, I will give thee due. But what was the success of that great day? Hector of Troy, unwounded, went away.
How sure the prize will to Ulysses fall? The murmuring soldiers mutter his deserts, preferring him for Ajax. Hear the rest.
But, O Achilles, when I view these arms, I cannot but lament thine obsequies. Thou wall of Greece, when thou wast basely slain, I took thee on my shoulders, and from Troy bore thee then armed in the habiliments I once more seek to bear. Behold that shield, 'tis a description cosmograph call of all the earth, the air, the sea, and heaven. What are the Hyades, or grim Orion, he pleads, or what's Arcton? Thy rude hand would lift a shield. Thou canst not understand to admit my deeds of arms, which all these know better than I can speak. When in the night I ventured through Troy's great gates, and from the temple raped the Palladium, then I conquered Troy. Troy, whilst that stood, could never be subdued. In that I brought away their gods, their honours, Troy's ruin, and the triumphs of whole Greece. What hath blunt Ajax done to countervail this one of mine? He did with Hector fight. 10 years' war have ended in one night. What Ajax did was but by my direction. My counsel fought in him, and all his honours, if they be any, he may thank me for. What he hath done was since his flight I stayed. I therefore claim these arms, so I have said.
A shout within, Ulysses! Ulysses! The princes rise.
Such is the clamor of the multitude, and such, Ulysses, are your great deserts, that those rich arms are thine, the prize enjoy.
To the defence of Greece and sack of Troy.
Come, princes, now this strife is well determined.
See how eloquent the people charms. Ulysses by his tongue hath gained these arms.
Counsel prevails, both strength, above strength. Heralds proclaim through the whole camp Ulysses' glorious name.
Exeunt, the arms borne in triumph before Ulysses.
What? Dream'st thou, Ajax? Or is this object real that I see, which topsy turns my brain? Base Ithaca, to sway desert thus? Oh, that such rich trophies should clothe a coward's back. Nor is it strange I'll go turn coward too, and henceforth plot. Turn politicians all politicians. A rush for valour. Valour? This is the difference twixt the bold soldier and the cunning statesman. The first seeks honour, and the last his health. The valiant hold the knocks, the wise the wealth. It was gallant armour. Ajax' limbs would have become it bravely. The disgrace of losing such an armour by contention will live to all posterity, and the shame in Stygian Lethe drown great Ajax' name. Oh, that I had here my base opposite in the Achillean armour briskly clad. Vulcan, that wrought it out of gads of steel with his cyclopean hammers, never made such noise upon his anvil forging it, than these my armoured fists in Ulysses' rack, to mould it new upon the coward's back.
Enter Thersites.
Why, how now, mad Greek?
And art thou come, Ulysses? Thus and thus I'll hammer on thy proof steel burgonet.
Hold, Ajax, hold! The devil take thee, hold! I am Thersites. Hell rot thy fingers off.
But art thou not Ulysses?
No, I tell thee.
And is not thine head armed?
Hell's plays confound thee, no. Thou thinkst thou hast Menelaus hand in hand. I am Thersites.
Thersites. Canst thou rail
No, yes. Better than fight,
and curse
better than either, rarely,
and spit thy venom in the face of Greece?
admirably.
Do. Let's hear it. I prithee, for heaven's sake, do.
With whom shall I begin?
Begin with the head.
Then that have at thee, Menelaus. Thou art a king and a...
No more. But if on any, rail on me. Desert should still be snarled at. Vice pass free.
Who thou, the son of Telamon? Thou art a fool, an ass, a very block. What makest thou here at Troy to aid a cuckold, being a bachelor? Paris has stolen no wife of thine. If Ajax had been aught but the worst of these, he might have kept his country, solaced his father, and comforted his mother. Who thinks hast thou for spending thy means, hazarding thy soldiers, wasting thy youth, losing thy blood, endangering their life, and all for a...
Peace!
Yes, peace for shame. But what thanks hast thou for all thy travail? Ulysses hath the armour. And what art thou now reckoned? A good mule, a horse that knows not his own strength, an ass fit for service, and good for burthens, to carry gold, and to feed on thistles. Farewell, coxcomb. I shall be held to be a cock of the same dunghill, for bearing thee company so long. On to Ulysses.
Base slave, thou art for cowards, not for men. I'll stone thee if thou comest not back again. This vantage have the valiant of the base. Death, which they coldly fear, we boldly embrace. Help me to rail on them too, or thou diest.
Do it then, while 'tis hot.
Was Agamemnon our great general?
A blind justice, and I would he had kissed fortune's blind cheeks, when he could not see to do thee justice.
Well, and what's Menelaus?
A king and a cuckold and a horn. Plague consume him.
Amen. What's Diomed? He sat on the bench too.
A very bench whistler, and loves Cressida. Hell and confusion swallow him.
Amen. Amongst these, what's Thersites?
A rogue, a railing rogue, a cur, a barking dog. The pox take me else.
Amen. But what's Ulysses, my base adversary?
A damned politician. Scylla and Charybdis swallow him,
And greedily devour him,
and utterly consume him,
and eat up his posterity
and rot out his memory,
in endless infamy.
and everlasting obloquy.
Amen. Enough. No more? Shall he the arms enjoy, and we the shame? Away, Thersites, fly. Our prayers now said, we must prepare to die.
Die, and with them be damned.
Exit. Wow. Okay.
That
So
was
now
fun.
we have another change of scene. We've gone from battle and betrayal to small claims court, followed by a round of insults. Thoughts? Sarah, and then Eric, and then Alan.
I'm finding this really interesting because it's years and years and years and years since I read the original Terror, and we're not talking about that. But what this seems to be doing is it seems to be creating some sort of, all of a sudden Ajax has become a human, which, you know, we've said before, that's the great strength of this play. It takes all these mythical figures and it makes them human. All of a sudden he's become human, and it seems to me that Thersites, assuming that the play is he's gonna end the same way as he does in the original, it seems to me that Thersites has just supplied him with really good psychological motivation for doing what he ultimately does. Because, you know, it's all very well to kind of go off the deep end, and spoilers, commit suicide, because you feel your honor's been tainted. But it's quite another thing to have someone say to you, you idiot, you didn't even have to be in this war. You could have stayed at home and honored your parents and ruled your kingdom and just been, the excellent leader that you think you are. And yet you came and you chose to do this. And that internal voice, or that internalized voice, that judgment upon him kind of sets up all the psychological motivation that the actor who's playing Ajax needs to then, take the story off where it needs to go, presumably. So I found that scene absolutely fascinating. It was funny, but it was also really smart.
Yeah, I think also there was a sort of, it's kind of lightening the mood before you get into suicide, basically. Spoilers. But yeah, it's interesting what that scene is doing, and also the bit before where you've got the sort of oration is interesting, which is basically a debate, isn't it? It's kind of, as Aliki said, some small claims court, kind of sums it up quite well, I think. But it's just sort of, it's interesting how it's set up in a way that makes you want to sort of side with Ajax as well. It's not like he's completely incompetent or unable to express himself in the way that, like, in what matters to him. To him, like, valor matters kind of like it mattered to Troilus and all the other characters who died. So he's practically behaving like a Trojan, almost, but he's not Trojan.
Alan and Lynn, is that a hand?
Yeah, I must admit, I enjoyed that, and I like Thersites. I think I'm possibly slightly typecast as the cynical old so-and-so. But I think from practical purposes, in theatrical terms, I'm seeing this as the penultimate scene in a panto. Let's do a two-hander, front of tabs, while we set up for the big finale, while everybody gets changed into the posh frocks.
Maybe.
Lynn, did you have something else to say?
Yeah. So the small claims court thing, I wonder, because both in classical antiquity and in the Renaissance, in the early modern period, honor in the sense of reputation and what people thought of you and prestige was really important. Really important. And who gets the armor of the universally acknowledged greatest soldier among the Greeks is maybe not as petty a matter as we tend to think of it now. So this episode, I think, interested early modern scholars, the fact that Ajax was so humiliated by the fact that they awarded the armor to the clever one rather than the militarily powerful one, that he went crazy and started killing sheep instead of his fellow soldiers. And then when he kind of came to, he's like so embarrassed he had to kill himself. And this is so I think scholars were interested in this in the period where this was written, and I don't think that many of them thought that it was silly. But does Heywood think it's kind of silly? I don't know. He might be mocking it, but maybe not entirally.
There's been so much else going on that we haven't really seen the character of Ajax, even though he's appeared before being really proud, until these scenes really come into focus. Sarah.
Yeah, I thought this in response to what Eric was saying, but in actual fact it ties in with what Lynn's saying as well. I love the ambiguity, because he is an arse, Ajax. He's so full of hubris. I genuinely think you could play this like he just can't imagine any possibility of the armor not going to him, and the shade he throws on Ulysses. He loves himself so much. And that is absolutely something that I think Heywood is lampooning. It's there in the verse. He bigs himself up so much, but then, on the one hand, it is comic, and you have this scene with Thersites to underline the comedy of it, the fact that he doesn't get the armor, but then also it's kind of really sad as well, and that whole thing of honor, and the fact that he's been wounded to the core by this, what he sees as a betrayal, the fact that he was the one who saved the ships while everyone else was running off to their tents. He was the one who fought Hector, and he did fight him to a standstill, even if it was with a tree. It's like there's, on the one hand, there is definite satire here of these sort of big macho trope, but on the other hand, there's genuine pathos, I think, for this guy's disappointment, and the fact that it's beginning to turn his senses to the fact that he's so furious, like with himself as much as with anyone else, that he attacks the first person he sees, because everyone he sees is Ulysses, because Ulysses is the symbol of his shame. And I think that's just such a deft, you've got to be a very deft writer to pull off that combination of parody and pathos.
And again, we haven't really talked about him before that much, but previously he's been called base and shunted aside from other scenes, Ajax. And he's as royal as anybody else there. He's a king's son. Eric.
I was going to say, you could also sort of take it as, as you said, he's as royal as the rest of them, but also a joke that goes too far kind of thing, depending on, because he does go, make fun of this guy, make fun of that guy, make fun of me, and then the realization dawns on him in the next bit, which we're going to cover in a minute, I hope. It kind of, you can sort of see how that happens. Like, the most important thing to him was taken away from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shall we go on and see what happens next? There's only one more scene, I think. Yeah. Act 5, Scene 2. Enter over the stage all the Grecian princes, courting and applauding Ulysses, not minding Ajax.
Not look on Ajax? Ajax, Telamon. He that at once saved all your ships from fire. Not look on me? Ha! Are these hands, this sword which made the fame of Troy, great Hector, shrink below the ruins of an abject scorn, slayed? So slayed? What base thing am I to creep so? So dull Greek, whom fame or blood hath raised one step above. Jove, see this and laugh, old grandsire. By hell, I'll shake thy kingdom for it. Not look on Ajax, the triple-headed dog, the whips of steel, the ravenous vulture, and the restless stone are all mere fables. Here's a trusty sword. 'Tis mine. Mine own. Who claims this from me, huh? Cowards and shallow-witted fools have slept amidst an armoured, safe and secure under this guard. Nay, Agamemnon too. But see from yon sea a shoal of sands come rolling on, tricked up in bristled fins of porpoises and dogfish. Ho, my sword, I will encounter them. They come from Greece and bring a poisonous breath from Ithaca, tempered with false Ulysses' gall. Foe, it stinks of his wife's chaste urinal. Look, Look by yonder wood how slyly in the skirts march policy and the devil. I fear you not. Dare you not yet? Not want to fight with me? Who then? What's he must cope with Ajax?
Ajax.
Well said, old boy. Was Nestor, my brave lad? I'll do it. I'll do it. Come, my fine cutting blade. Make me immortal. Lively fountain, spout out. Oh, yet with more life, brave, glorious stream, grow to a tide, and sink the Grecian fleet in seas of Ajax blood. So, ho. Lure back my soul again, which in amaze gropes for a perch to rest on. Heart, great heart, swell bigger yet at split. No gods, no men, furies, engaged spirits, tortures all. Ajax by none could but by Ajax fall.
He kills himself. Enter on the one part Agamemnon, Ulysses, Menelaus, Diomed with the body of Hector borne by Grecian soldiers. On the other part Priam, Paris, Deiphobus, Aeneas, and Tenor with the body of Achilles, borne by Trojan soldiers. They interchange them, and so, with trailing the colours on both sides, depart. Thersites only stays behind and concludes. The epilogue.
A sweet exchange of treasure, term it I may, even earth for ashes, mere dust for clay. Let Ajax kill himself and say 'twas brave. Hector, a worthy call, yet could not save. Poor fool, his coxcomb. Achilles bear him high, and Troilus boldly. All these brave ones die. Judge you, is it not better far to keep ourselves in breath and linger war? Had all these fought as I've done, such my care had been on both sides that presume I dare. These had with thousands more survived. Judge the host. I shed no blood at all have lost. They shall not see young Pyrrhus, nor the queen Panacea, which had they but been as wise as I, they might. Nor Sinon he, famous of all men to be most like me, nor after these Orestes and his mother, Pylades, Aegisthus, with many other, our second part doth promise. These, if I fail, as I on them, you on Thersites rail.
Explicit actus quintus finis. Wow, what an interesting play. We're running a little short of time, so I'm going to ask you to combine your thoughts on the end of the play with final thoughts, if that's all right. Does anyone want to start? Sarah.
Yes, sorry, I want to start because I was just so amazed by that ending. It's like this final act becomes like a mini tragedy. It's this mini tragedy of this guy, you know, who is killed by his own hubris, effectively, you know, which is kind of quite a common tragic trope. But it's even better than that because it's also this sort of satirical. It's a tragedy. It's a genuine, heartfelt tragedy, but it's also a satire upon tragedy because even after all of that, even after he's killed himself and had this big, you know, final speech, what happens at the end? Like, we don't see his body, you know, mourned and honoured and you know, taken away for burial. It's Hector, and it's Achilles, and so even after all of that, the final tragedy is actually the fact that this is all just ridiculous. And then Thersites underlines it by saying, yeah, you know, I'm still alive. If everyone had just done what I did, if no one had actually bothered with all this war stuff, they'd all still be alive too. And I thought that was just a marvelous ending. I mean, what a way to frame this, mythical story of the Greeks and the Trojans to actually sort of bring it back at the end, right down to this sort of dwindling point of like, yeah, what is war? What is it good for? I thought that was the most fantastic ending. That's my thought about this scene. My final thought about this play is it needs to be an audio drama. There is so much action in it, but the word pictures are so fantastic. The energy within the verse, the fact that there are so many sound effects as well in the stage directions. I think it would lend itself beautifully to an audio production. You could just you could create an adaptation that worked with the listener's mind and imagination to create this amazing battle unfolding before you. And I know it would be great on stage too, with all the action, but I think it would make an absolutely stonking audio production. So yeah, if you're watching, Rob, that's maybe one for the future to think about.
Anyone else with thoughts on the finale or final thoughts? Lynn?
I'll piggyback on Sarah a little bit, because I don't think this is explicitly or deliberately an anti-war play, but it really kind of does show you that really nasty underbelly of, and it's for meaninglessness of honor and war. What is it good for? In the first half, I found it very striking that we have all these near misses to derail the juggernaut and find a way forward that doesn't involve war. And those, but we keep missing our chance to end the war by diplomacy or agreement. And in this half, it's just like it gets so nasty and dishonorable, and Thersites ends up saying, if everyone were as dishonorable and cowardly as I am, this never would have happened. And then he hints at the aftermath, which is also quite bloody and tragic and disgusting. So I find that really interesting about it, that it really shows us the very ugly side of organized human conflict, which I think is really quite audacious in this period.
Okay. Any other volunteers, or shall I start calling on you? Eric?
I think it was Helen who said it during one of our sessions, in some other session about a war play or something, where we when there's peace, they make plays about war, and it makes me and vice versa. When there's war, they make plays about peace. So this is kind of in between. It depends how you sympathize and how you sort of if you want to sort of idealize all these sort of characters or not. And obviously, I don't know. It's just an interesting play.
And does that include your final thoughts about?
Probably.
Is that your final thoughts, basically?
Yeah, it's just been interesting to listen to also, because I didn't have much to read today, so I was just listening and sort of. I enjoyed it.
Helen, finale thoughts and final thoughts.
Yes, I was very surprised by everybody's reactions to Act 5, because I thought you were all going to be, what's all this about? What's going on? Why put this here? This whole act could be cut. And I'm glad that in fact you've shown me a lot about it that I hadn't spotted. But it's one of Heywood's things that his acts in the previous plays that we've read, the previous Greek myth plays that we've read, are the individual acts are sort of mini plays. And we were noting that in this one, we had 4 acts of continuous action where events followed from the previous act. But this Act 5 seems to revert to his previous way of writing. I mean, I think he had a problem of knowing where to put the interval between acts for between part 1 and part 2. So he had to decide he couldn't get the entire Trojan War into one play, or he didn't intend to. He's going to put in 2. So he had to make a break, and this is where he chose to make it. And I think that may be why we get an Act 5 like this, which isn't, I know it is technically part of continuous action, but it does seem to go to a completely different place.
Yeah. Anyone else for finale thoughts and final thoughts? Okay, then I am going to start calling on you.
Elizabeth is showing.
I know, Eric, I saw the hand. But
No, Elizabeth is.
Elizabeth, go on. You're muted, love.
Thank you. I'm just going to keep this brief. I really, really enjoyed that ending. I thought that some of us were talking about the versification, the versifying in this play. And I just thought it was so Ajax's final speeches were so beautifully written. Mm-hmm. And I love that this unsung hero gets his moment in the spotlight towards the end of, we've had the death of the great Achilles and Hector, and now we have Ajax who Heywood gives the stage, and I like that a lot. And then giving Thersites the final word as well was really kind of choice move by Heywood. So I really loved the finale, and I really enjoyed the play as a whole. I think it's highly political. I think it was Rachael who was asking what was going on, what was going on at the time of this play in English politics, because it seems to be making a commentary on the political state of the nation. And I don't know if anyone else felt that way too. Those were my final thoughts.
Thank you. Eric, if you're burning to make a comment, can you put it in at the very end? Because I really would like to get everyone's final thoughts. Thank you. Final thoughts then. Who hasn't spoken? Emma.
Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed this session. Obviously, I wasn't here for the first 2, so I didn't quite know what to expect. I was kind of expecting kind of grandeur and heroes and things like that. But I was really, really pleasantly surprised as to how drawn in I was to all of the characters, and how I felt about them kind of wasn't what I expected either. You kind of really, you turn against Achilles, and he's quite an unpleasant character. And then I love Thersites, kind of offsets everybody else and comments on the action, which is really refreshing as you go along. And then Ajax's whole kind of tragic arc, that's probably the part that drew me in the most about this whole session. How he talks about Achilles not really being the hero that he says he is, and how it's all his myrmidons that did the work. And that's kind of how the audience is feeling at that time, actually, I expect. And yeah, his whole tragic arc was it was so beautifully written, and it draws you in so much. And it's comic and tragic at the same time, like Sarah was saying. And so, yeah, I was really, really compelled by that.
Shall I? Yeah. Rachael, was that a hand?
Well, I'll go. I was just replying to Lynn in the chat, but I really enjoyed this. I wasn't expecting that bit with Ajax at the end, but it kind of reminds me of when we had that twist with Alcides in the last one, that there's these interesting little character studies he loves to throw in during certain parts of it. I'm really looking forward to the next part. I do feel that there must have been some political message, like Elizabeth was saying, and I really agree with that. I don't know, the Ajax thing, because I don't think anybody who is writing now would end things the way that this was ended, but there's something really satisfying to me about how this was ended, because it's so perplexing with the characters. And I forget the name of the play that we did, but it was Thomas something that I think Anthony Munday did, or at least had a part in, that Ajax and that character seem the same, because it's kind of a guy that you would, see at a bar or something, and you'd talk to and you'd know kind of, and then one day you hear something about them and they're not there anymore, and they just don't seem like the person who would do that. So it's I don't know, all these characters are so interesting. Really looking forward to part 2.
Alan, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think following up on what Sarah was saying, I think an audio production would be the way to go with this, because I think if you were going to try and actually stage it, you would need such a vast theatre space and vast company to make it work. It would end, if you didn't have that resource available, it would end up looking a bit tawdry. Whereas with judicious use of sound effects and soundscapes in audio, I think it would work incredibly well.
Lynn, final thoughts?
I went right after Sarah.
I'm sorry. In that case, Kyle, you're on the spot.
Oh no. I just felt a bit perplexed by the ending, and I wonder about the anti-Greek kind of stuff going on there. I mean, it just seems like that must be the kind of an allusion to the Trojan Avant kind of Roman British stuff that, as Lynn was pointing out. I'm not sure. I just feel I'm not much at the later 16th century stuff either, so I'm kind of perplexed by that and what that might mean. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Eric, you wanted to add something earlier. Do you still want to say it?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of agree that, we kind of started with light comedy-ish things and then just slid very, very slowly and insidiously into tragedy, which of course does not, foreshadow anything that will happen in the aftermath. But yeah.
But a tragedy with a sharp, ironic commentary from Thersites. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I wouldn't say that we started off with comedy and slid into tragedy, because we started off with Priam itching for war, which is not particularly comic. And I mean, it's the beginning is kind of a bit tense. We just have flashes of comedy all the way through this. We've just had this kind of ironic, like, comic strain. There's been a lot of tragedy. I mean, Hector's death. Thersites kind of into sort of being spliced in with his kind of sarcasm and his ironic take on everything. The comedy's been there all the way through, I think, and I think the tragedy's been there all the way through as well. It's just Heywood's really good at playing the one off the other and creating this really human. I keep saying this. I'm like on like a parrot repeating itself, but just turning these mythical figures into human people who are flawed and who are not all good or all evil, but just kind of make choices in the moment. And sometimes they're not the choices that we, the audience, knowing this story, are expecting them to make. And it just makes something that we all thought we knew the story of, like, really compelling and suspenseful.
I think that's a really good note to end on. Thank you. So with a quick reminder that on our YouTube channel, you will find the earlier parts of this play, as well as Thomas Heywood's other plays and many, many other plays from the English canon up until 1649, I think. I've been your guest host, Aliki Chapple, standing in for Robert Crighton. It only remains to thank our wonderful, wonderful readers and thinkers for their reading and their fascinating thoughts on the matter. And goodbye!